Well, hello and welcome back to the Fin to the Woods podcast with me, Finian Hackett. It's been 2 months, I think, since the last episode, or thereabouts. It's been quite a while. I do apologise, but I was very busy over Christmas and I needed a bit of a break. But now we're back, better than ever, for a full year of Fin to the Woods podcast episodes. I'm very excited. There's lots of really exciting upcoming shows over the next 12 months and lots of things that I imagine will be announced as well. And I'm gonna this episode's not going to be like the usual episodes talking about the news and everything else. I'll get back to that next week, but for now we're going to talk about what I've been doing over Christmas, working on panto, what that is like, and also the theatre trips that I've had over the last couple of months, including a couple of pantos and 2 very interesting plays. So, for me, the whole of the end of November, the whole of December, and the beginning of January were filled to the brim with panto. I was working on Aladdin at my family's theatre. I was an ASM on it, and that's where I was for the majority of Christmas. And panto is fun, do not get me wrong, but it is tiring. It's quite a lot, and obviously there are many, many pantos up and down the country which are much bigger than ours and also smaller than ours as well. They vary in size all over the place with the amount of people who work on them, and you really do have to work as a team no matter how big or small that team may be. And for us, it wasn't a very big stage management team. There was only 2 ASMs, 1 DSM, and then stage crew as well, who kind of came in and out every show. And the cast also wasn't massive. We haven't got the space to have a really big cast, but we have such a good time every year, and it's always fairly regular with the people who do it, with the cast and the crew, and it's always nice to see those people. You do think that you've spent about 12 months with them because you spend such an intense amount of time together. It's really bizarre, and then it comes to an end on January the 3rd or whenever we closed, and that's it. Then you're done. It's really, really peculiar, but that is the joy of panto, I guess. It's short and sweet, very intense, and that's it. The main joy of panto is the schedule. It's intense, as I said, but it's quite a confusing one as well because it varies week to week depending on the kind of busyness of the period that we're in or when the schools break up. This year the schools broke up really late, so we had less 2-show days than we have done previously. We had a week of school performances to kind of get everything going, which is really nice because it's kind of a little bit of a preview period, I guess, for the cast and for us to get to know the show, get to polish anything, get to tweak anything, and still get that audience reaction. Yes, there's no adults, so there's no kind of reaction to the adult jokes within the panto. However, there are teachers there and you can hear them laughing at them. But it's just nice to get a reaction from the children and see what they laugh at and see how they react. Like in the ghost gag section, which features in many, many pantos, most pantos have it, the children were so bloody loud. It was crazy. I was doing a scene change behind the cloth and it was so loud, deafening. But that's good because they were enjoying it and that's what we want. So after that kind of preview week, we opened on the Friday and then we did 3 shows on the Saturday and 3 shows on the Sunday. Now, 3-show days are not a normal occurrence in regular theatre. In normal shows, in normal plays and musicals and their runs, they do 8 shows a week and usually a matinee on kind of a midweek and also on a Saturday. Sometimes now on a Sunday as well. Some shows have kind of put one in there, but often they do not have 3-show days. Some family shows do, things like Peppa Pig or Stickman. They are known to have 3-show days, but they are mainly limited to panto, and for a reason, because they are a lot. You kind of lose track of where you are, what you're doing, because you've done one show at 11 o'clock, you then do another at 2:30, and then you have to do another at 6 o'clock. And sometimes, because it's so repetitive and panto you have to do the same thing show in, show out, you kind of lose track of what show you're on and you think, God, have I done this before? Have I done this already? So you do have to pay attention on those days, especially after we'd done 3 on the Saturday. To do another 3 the next day was a lot, and I was very tired. Luckily we had a day off on the Monday, which was a blessing, but it's still a lot. I don't love them, I really do not, and I wish we didn't do them, but they sell really well, and that's the good thing really, is you get so many bums on seats on those days because each show gets so busy, so they have to book for the next one, and it's part of it. I mean, no one enjoys them, but you just have to get used to it. So after that, also we had kind of a week of evening shows really, because the schools were still in, they hadn't broken up yet for Christmas holidays, and there's not much point in doing a matinee or anything like that during that time period, because these are for children. Pantos are for children, and if they can't come, then there's not much point in doing a show at that time. Also, in that week, we had our adult night. So, on adult night, which, if you probably can gather, is for adults only, over 18s only, or over 16s, over 18s, I think. And basically, it's just the rudest thing that you will ever see in your life. Everything changes. I mean, for example, Aladdin's lamp was a big gold dildo. That is what it was. So take from that what you will. But it is the rudest, kind of crudest. It's just, it's personally, it's not, I wouldn't go and see one because it's not really my thing. But working on it is quite enjoyable. And oh my God, the audience absolutely lap it up. So it's really popular and a really exciting one-off night. And if you don't get a ticket, you miss out. We only do one for that exact reason. And yeah, so we had that week, and then we did another 3-show week, a 6-show weekend even. No one wants that. And then the following week it was Christmas, and again, for us, Christmas Day is just a day off, but it isn't really, because you have to see all your family, you have to spend time with everyone, you don't get much downtime on Christmas Day, so it doesn't feel like a day off particularly. And then we had one more 3-show day after that as well, and they were done, and we were all so happy. We also had our relaxed performance, which is a really important thing, and I've spoken about it on the podcast before about how important they are, and I went to one, I went to Back to the Future's one, I was invited to go and see it, and it's really good because it gets people to come to the theatre who might not feel comfortable coming to the theatre in a normal situation. So the lights are on for the majority of the show in the auditorium. You've also got kind of no haze, no smoke effects, no pyros. The volume of the mics is lower as well, and the audience are free to roam wherever they like. They can go in the bar where there was a little play area. They can do whatever they like, and that is the whole point of these relaxed performances. And again, this was our busiest one this year from all the ones that we've done previously. I think word of mouth is spreading, and more people are becoming aware of it. And we've had it before when people have come to see the show when I've done front of house stuff, and we've said to them, and they've had to leave early because their child wasn't enjoying it, it was too loud or it was too scary. We've said, come back to the relax and see what you think. And we've had really positive reactions from people who have come to it. So yeah, but I think every theatre should do them, and I think it's really important, especially over Panto, which is so family and children orientated, that these things should just be the norm across any Panto run. So yeah, I really enjoyed that performance, and that was on our 3-show day, so it kind of split it up a little bit as well, because it was quite different, and it was in the morning, so yeah, it kind of helped the morale of everybody. So it's an intense period, and you have so many events over that time. Like I said, Christmas Day. For me, I have quite a big family, so on our other day off, which I think was the 29th, I had another family Christmas with the other side of my family. You've then also got New Year thrown into that as well. We had a big party, I did a quiz, it was wonderful, but it isn't a quiet time of year, so on those days off, they don't feel like days off. So I do love Panto, but this coming year, I'd quite like to not do it, because I just would like to have one normal Christmas again. Pretty please, pretty please. Also, over Panto, illness is rife. Now, this happens on lots of shows over the winter period, and it still is happening now in January, February. It's a time when illness goes around theatre like hotcakes. I mean, over on Broadway, they've had so many issues over Christmas where whole shows have cancelled weeks of performances because they haven't got enough people who are well enough to do the show. And that's no different in Panto. Because it's so much and you have to have a healthy voice and a healthy attitude, you've got to look after yourself, and if you don't, that's when people get ill. People lose their voice, people don't feel great. Luckily, we didn't have too much illness this year. It's been worse previously. I was ill for about 3-4 days. I felt really rough, just kind of with a cold, but because you don't have time to sit back and kind of ride it out, you just have to work through it. It doesn't get better very quickly, and that is horrible, really. No one enjoys working when they're ill. But for me, it didn't really matter as much because I wasn't on stage. If I was on stage and felt like that, it would have been shitty. But you do just have to kind of go through it at Christmas. And I've spoken to a few of my friends who are working on pantos across the country, and they said they've also had so much illness this year. Same as previously, really, but just everyone's just taken days off, and the principal leading kind of top billing have had to take days off, which very rarely happens in panto, but unfortunately it does at this time of year. So yeah, that's another kind of factor you have to deal with, is illness and the weather, and just it all layers on top of one another. So even though I did 30 odd shows of panto, I clearly couldn't get enough because I went to see two other pantos this year. So the first one I went to see was the Palladium panto. Now this has kind of become a bit of a tradition, I guess, in some sense to me, because I really want to go. I say that, I haven't been to about four of them, but in my mind I've been to more. But I just really enjoy it because the money is there. You see the money on stage. It's such an impressive panto, and it's got always got the best people in it, and it just, you pay a lot for your ticket. I say that I only paid £50 for a single seat, and to be honest, any seat at the London Palladium is pretty good. You don't really get a bad view. I was in the back row of the dress circle and I could see everything. And for £50, I was very happy with that. And as I say, you can see what you're paying for on the stage, which sometimes doesn't happen, as we will get to later. But the Palladium Panto is always a big spectacle. This year it had Julian Clary and Jane MacDonald leading Robin Hood. Now, that doesn't sound like your conventional Maid Marian and Robin Hood, does it? But they were absolutely brilliant, and they took the piss out of the fact that they were both too old for the part. And every time Jane MacDonald came on, Julian Clary said something like the since Channel 5's cruising sensation Jane MacDonald or something like that, and it was really funny. And it was just really camp and really crude. I think one of their rudest to date, and I'm not complaining about that because the jokes are so... see, that is a panto that isn't made for family, I don't think. It's made for... maybe it's made for family with older children, but definitely not younger kids. I think if we took my little brother and sister to go and see it, I don't know if they'd enjoy it as much as I do, because Julian Clary is kind of a stand-up comic for the whole thing, rather than playing a character, really. But you've always got such fantastic supporting actors in that as well, like Charlie Stemp and this year Marisha Wallace and Rob Madge, like seasoned West End performers who just lift it even further. And the costumes are just incredible. They have these lovely like horse ones, which I loved as well. But their budget must be out of this world, and they had cruise ship that Jane MacDonald entered on. They had a huge staircase that appeared from the back of the stage, a bit like the end of 42nd Street when that staircase appears. They had a flying fire engine that went out over the auditorium. It kind of blows my mind. They had a fire-breathing dragon at one point. It's all coming back to me now as I speak about it. It's just incredible. So I'm really glad I got to go, and I got to go with my friend Neve, who had never been before, and it was really nice for her to see it as well. Because panto is an experience that you want to do with other people, I think. I went to a few pantos by myself last year, and you do feel like a bit of a prat by yourself with loads of children around you. It's not the most enjoyable thing to do by yourself, so going with someone else is always nice. And another panto I went to this year was the Marlow Theatre panto in Canterbury. Now, I went last year to see that. They did Aladdin last year there, and this year it was Beauty and the Beast starring Maisie Smith from EastEnders, famous for playing Tiffany, saying Not Flippin' Invited, that one. She was Belle, or whatever the character's called in Beauty and the Beast, the panto, and also Mr. Maker was in it. He's kind of come back and is now kind of a regular at the Marlow, and it was a good panto, do not get me wrong, but Beauty and the Beast, for me, is just not my favourite panto, because when I think of Beauty and the Beast, I think of the film, I think of the musical. You want to see Mrs. Potts, you want to hear those songs, and I just don't think it really works as a panto because it's so story driven, and you just want those characters. You do want them. And the whole time I was just going, oh, I wish I was watching the musical on stage rather than a panto. And that's not because it was a bad panto. I just think that's how I feel with Beauty and the Beast. It's like I've seen they've started to do The Little Mermaid this year, and I think they're doing it again next year somewhere. Crossroads are doing it. I don't know how I'd feel about that as a panto as well, because you think so much of Ursula and Ariel and the look of the film and Sebastian. I wonder how they're going to get round that without getting sued by Disney. We'll have to wait and see. But I really enjoyed going to the Marlowe. My friend Daisy was working backstage on it once again this year, and I hadn't seen her in ages, so I got to see her and have a catch-up. And I also went with Neve as well. We went on another outing, had a wander around Canterbury, which was still slightly Christmassy. We went the day after we closed our panto, which was probably a mistake because we were both quite tired and pantoed out, but I really wanted to see it, and I'm glad I went. What baffles me, though, is their schedule. They open at the end of November and don't close till like the 15th of January. Or something like that. Isn't that ridiculous? That's so long. I could not be bothered, frankly, but they are. And it sells so well. It was, I mean, for a post-Christmas performance, it was pretty sold out, which is quite impressive. And we went on a weird day as well. We went on like a Sunday evening or something like that. I can't remember when we went, but it was a weird time to go and it was still quite busy. So yeah, very impressive, and also just nice to see another panto as well. Once panto had got out the way, I had a couple of things booked to go and see. The first was The Tempest at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. Now, I booked this months ago for £25 on their ticket deal because I wanted to see a Jamie Lloyd production. Obviously, Jamie Lloyd has recently had a lot of success in the West End and on Broadway, especially with Sunset Boulevard, and I didn't get to see that, so I wanted to book something so I could say that I've seen something of his work, because I feel like if I have this podcast or my TikTok or whatever it is, I can't be sitting here making opinions on it when I've never seen anything that he's done. So I decided to go and see The Tempest. Now, it was starring Sigourney Weaver, who is obviously a very famous actress, been in many, many films, not so much on stage. This was her West End debut, and she is 75, I believe she is, or around that age, and this is her first time performing in the West End. I wasn't expecting to love this production, mainly because I'd read the reviews. Now, that is something that maybe I shouldn't have done, because I went in with a slightly tainted view on it, because the reviews weren't very good. They were quite scathing, to be honest. And also, The Tempest isn't notorious for being one of Shakespeare's most entertaining plays. It isn't the funniest, it isn't the most kind of thrilling. Maybe in a different production it would have been, but it certainly wasn't this time. So I went with my friend Ashton, we went to see it, we went up to London, and we had good seats, I have to say, for £25. They were marvellous seats in the stalls, we could see everything. And I sat there and I looked at the stage, and it was a big grey cloth, and that was it, kind of, at the front of the stage, billowing out towards us, with some weird sounds playing, and I thought, oh, this is going to be an interesting couple of hours at the theatre. For me, I just did not enjoy it at all. I thought it was really bland, really boring, and just really not my cup of tea. As I said, I went into this knowing kind of what Jamie Lloyd's work is like. It's very minimalistic, very stripped back, very kind of GCSE kind of style, if you will. And that isn't my theatre. That isn't what I enjoy going to see. But I really wanted to enjoy this, because I wanted to understand why everyone else enjoyed this work, because I've never personally got it. I didn't help that Sigourney Weaver was pretty naff. She was really wooden, really bland, and she did this big monologue at the beginning. So she's playing Prospero, which is usually played by a man, but has often been kind of gender bent and played by a woman. And she did this monologue at the beginning of the show as Prospero, and I was like, oh my lord, I've got to sit through this. She was so monotone, there was just no kind of excitement in her. And I don't know if that was a directing choice, or her character choice, whatever it was. For me, it didn't work. I thought it really drained all the life and soul out of the production. It didn't help as well, there was no set. Bearing in mind we are at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, a notoriously massive venue with so much space for massive sets, and it was empty. By empty, I mean empty. It was to the back wall. You could see the dock door. There was two kind of mounds of dirt and that big cloth that was over the front of the stage in the beginning, and that was it. They had no props. They all had one costume, some of which were not great, and I didn't understand kind of the meaning behind the costumes. Why was someone wearing a gilet? Where were we set? What time period was it? It was very confusing. The lack of props also didn't help because they were talking about certain things and you didn't see them, and there was Prospero had this big staff that she just didn't have, and she was talking about breaking it. I'm like, well, you haven't broken it because I haven't bloody seen it, and I just didn't get it. I didn't get what they were trying to do with it because personally, I just found it really boring. And I didn't think it was exciting theatre, and I just thought it was a waste of the Drury Lane. Such a big venue with so much potential for excitement, and the lighting was just really simple lighting stakes, one big light flooding the stage at one point, then again from the side. There was just nothing. It was I just didn't enjoy it, which was such a shame because I really wanted to. I really did. I wanted to understand why people loved this, but from what I've seen online, people kind of felt the same. I posted a TikTok about it and lots of people commented their feelings and thoughts on it, and it was pretty similar to mine. Mason Alexander Park, who was in the show, I really enjoyed. They played, I can't remember what character it was, but they flew down from the ceiling and I thought they were really good. And also Matthew Horn, who plays Gavin in Gavin and Stacey, he was also in it, but so over the top that in contrast to Sigourney's performance and the whole stylistic kind of look of the production, he didn't really fit. He seemed so out of place and so over characterized compared to some of the other actors in it. But yeah, I won't be rushing back to see any more of his work, I have to say, or any more kind of versions of Shakespeare like that, because I just thought it was an uninteresting production. Bearing in mind the Tempest is set at sea, there's a big kind of storm, and it's quite magical, it's a bit out there. It didn't feel like that at all. And they're doing Much Ado About Nothing in a couple of weeks' time with Tom Hiddleston and Hayley Atwell. And after seeing that, I have no desire to go and see that. Because I just think there won't be any comedy in it. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but if it's anything like the set and the design for The Tempest, I just have no interest in going. So, yeah, I was disappointed in The Tempest. I really was. I wanted to enjoy it, but I just couldn't. And then this past week, I went to see Elektra at the Theatre Royal in Brighton. So this was a kind of preview week prior to it going to the West End. It's starring Brie Larson, it's directed by Daniel Fish, and this is opening, I think, in the West End on the 24th of January. So this week that this episode's coming out. But it had this kind of week in Brighton to kind of work things out, I guess. Now, again, I went into this not expecting to love it because it's a classic piece of theatre, kind of Greek tragedy. It's a new adaptation, it's a new translation of it, but it's a very old piece of theatre. It's also directed by Daniel Fish, who did the recent revival of Oklahoma, which I went to see and again didn't love because it was quite stripped back, quite minimalistic. Not really my kind of theatre, as you've probably become aware of by now. But I didn't hate Oklahoma because there was singing in it, and there were some really good performances in it. But it just, I just directing wise, it's not my cup of tea. So again, wasn't expecting to love this, but really wanted to see it in Brighton. Wanted to see Brie Larson really because she's quite a famous actress, and it's always interesting to see how movie actors translate to the stage with Sigourney and with her. And also Stockard Channing was in this as well. She wasn't originally announced to be in it, so after our tickets were booked, she was announced, but it was a pleasant surprise. Obviously, she's an 8-time, I think, Tony nominee. She is obviously best known for playing Rizzo in the film of Grease, but amongst other things like The West Wing and so many other things that she's done. So I was really excited to see her more than anything else, really. So I went with my friend Emma, and my dad and my stepdad also went as well. We weren't sat together because we booked at different times, but it was the Monday night, it was the first preview, so there's the argument that should I be reviewing this? Should I, if it's a preview, if they're going to change stuff? My opinion is yes, for the amount of money I've paid, I still want to be able to give my opinion on it. And I don't think it's going to change drastically much from what I saw. And trust me, from the base of it, I know what it's going to be like, and I can give you a definite opinion on my thoughts on it. I don't really understand it, and I didn't really get what they were trying to do. So, the set, for example, was a revolve. A black's painted stage, a revolve. There was this kind of cloth thing at the back, like circular cloth thing that was hanging from the ceiling. There was also some loop pedals on the side for Brie Larson to use because she had a handheld mic for the whole time, which I don't really enjoy. It feels like a bit of a gimmick. There was also these kind of spray paint guns that were on the side. I'll get to those in a minute. And then there was a couple of bits of rolled up tarpaulin in the middle of the stage. They never moved. They stayed there for the whole thing. There was a blimp upstage left, kind of in the flying above where the pedals were for Brie. There was no, it was kind of empty, back to the back wall, no wings, chairs at the side for the actors to sit there, apart from Stockard Channing, who clearly was in her contract, I do not sit on the side of the stage. She went off stage and came back on when she was needed. But that was kind of it. There was a Mickey Mouse stapled to the back wall. I know, I'm just as confused as you are. So, it was only an hour and a half, luckily. Only an hour and a half with with no interval, thank God. But I honestly think if there had been an interval, lots of people would have left. Because people left near where my dad was sat. And to be honest, if there was an interval, I might have left as well. I didn't get it. It felt like GCSE with a budget. It was so odd. Everything about it was odd. And I didn't not understand the storyline. I really understood what was going on there because it was a very simple story. I had kind of looked it up before, but even if I hadn't done, the storyline's quite easily conveyed. That being said, a bit like the Tempest, there was no props, everyone had one costume. They had this really good Greek chorus, which was full of wonderful singers, and they sung a lot, and they had kind of really dissonant, is that the right word? Harmonies, and they were, I think, the best part of it, frankly. They were really good, and they all sounded fantastic, and they were so together, and it was all a cappella, and just really clever. I really enjoyed them. Brie Larson for me as Elektra, this kind of troubled woman whose father has been assassinated, I think by her mother, and she's seeking revenge basically. She is having a mental breakdown. And Brie Larson was fine. She was fine. I wasn't blown away. She was fine, in my opinion. And because she had this bloody handheld mic, she kept on doing these loop pedal things. And every time she said the word no, she didn't say it, she sang it. She just went, no, no, like that, every single time. In that weird kind of pitch as well. It was so odd. We were like laughing about it. No one really, and it wasn't just me, like everyone around us was like, what is going on? Every single time she did it. No matter the situation, every time she said the word father, there was a loud bang on the side of the stage. Every time they said someone else's name, they kind of like spat on the floor. Another time they'd like whack their chests. I did not understand what any of it meant. I didn't understand the meaning behind it. Why did she sing the word no? Why? But yes, she was having a mental breakdown, so I guess the use of the loop pedals and the microphone was to show that she was basically having a nightmare, and there were a couple of mics hanging from the ceiling, which every time she pretended to be her mother, she used that and it had a funny voice effect on. I think it was, I don't know, I didn't get it. That is the main moral of the story here. I didn't understand what they were trying to achieve. That blimp that I mentioned earlier, never got used, never had any kind of usage, no idea what it meant at all. This revolve that they had was used constantly to the point that I felt a bit sick because it was just constantly going round. I got so dizzy because every time you were watching it, the actor was kind of just moving in a circle, round and round and round. And when Stockard came on, I thought she was going to fall arse over tit onto the revolve because she had to kind of brace herself and then jump onto it. She was great. She was the best person in it, acting-wise. I thought she was phenomenal, really, and I would have watched 2.5 hours of just her by herself. She was barely in it, so underused, and I don't really get the point in getting her all the way over here to play a part for about 15 minutes of a play. So peculiar. Those spray paint gun things as well, they sprayed the characters, but only at certain times and not really in any correlation to what was going on. It was this kind of black dye, and it went all over her fur coat. And then at one point, when her, I think it was Elektra's sister came in, they brought that big cloth down at the back, and she put one of those spray things on the revolve, and it sprayed the paint all over the cloth at the back. And the music was really loud, so you couldn't hear any of the dialogue. There was one time in a scene where the smoke machine upstage right just went off for about 10 minutes and filled the whole auditorium so you couldn't see, and you weren't really focusing on any of the dialogue because that was going on. It just felt so kind of self-indulgent. It's felt really kind of, look what we're doing something differently, with no reasoning behind any of it. I'm sure there is reasoning behind it, but for the general audience goer, and I regard myself as someone who isn't stupid, I've been lucky enough to see quite a lot of theatre. I understand kind of these weird kind of nuanced things. I see the kind of underlying message sometimes when I go and see things, but with this I just had no fucking clue at all. So yeah, a really odd evening. I mean, I could talk about it for about an hour because I'm still confused by it a week on. I just don't get what they were doing. And I did again make a TikTok about it, and I asked people if they'd been to see it, and a few people commented and said we went and we didn't understand either. They didn't get it. They didn't understand what they were trying to achieve. And Brie Larson said at Stage Door, she was filmed by some people, that they're basically changing it each night and they're seeing what works and what doesn't. Basically a preview period. So I think like the spray paint guns, someone said weren't there when they went to see it, which I think is quite interesting because that was a really integral part of the show. But even the local newspaper, which usually gives shows 5 stars, just kind of does a kind of press release rather than a review, only gave it 3 stars, which I thought was quite scathing from them. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how it fares in the West End. Maybe it's just me being stupid, but no one understood it. When we were in the car park afterwards, we were talking with some random people and they said, what have we just watched? Everyone was kind of dumbfounded, laughing about it, leaving the theatre. And I don't know. Someone said I don't understand culture. That was one of the comments on my TikTok. No, I understand culture. I don't understand weird kind of plays like that. I don't see the point in them when it just confuses the audience rather than conveying a really good story or good message. I don't think theatre should be that kind of in itself, that kind of self-centered that the audience have no idea what's going on. That's just how I feel. But yes, I'd be intrigued to see what people think. I won't be rushing back to the West End to see it because I cannot look at that Revolve going round for 90 minutes again. I felt so dizzy. That was my main takeaway, really. So I'm in need of a good show or two in the next few weeks, and luckily I've booked to see The Importance of Being Earnest, which I'm really excited about, with Ncuti Gatwa and Sharon D. Clarke at the National. It closes this week and I'm going this weekend. I got a standing ticket for £10. Don't know what that's going to be like. I've never stood for 2 hours 45 minutes of a play, but this is meant to be incredible. It's had really good reviews. It's got such a good cast, and I'm just really looking forward to that. I'm going to try and see Titanic as well this weekend. Again, something fun and camp. I'd quite like to see Phantom as well. I've never seen that. I want to see Hadestown, but I think it might be a little bit too depressing for me. I don't know how sad it is. But yeah, there's a few shows on my list, but I'm definitely going to see Importance of Being Earnest, and hopefully I'll have good reviews for that. So that's it for this episode, the first one of 2025. I'm really looking forward to this year and all that it's hopefully going to bring me and all the shows that I'm going to go and see. But yes, we'll be back to business as usual next week with all the news and latest casting news and gossip and everything, plus the reviews of the things that I've been to see and anything else that might come up. I'm wanting to get some more interviews in. I haven't done one since August last year, but I want to do another few this year at least. I really want to do them, so hopefully going to get those in as well and booked in over the next few months. So yes, an exciting year ahead for the Fin to the Woods podcast. Remember to share it with your friends, and follow me on Instagram and TikTok and wherever you may find me, depending if it's been banned or not. Who knows what's going to go on in the next 12 months, but I hope you enjoy, but I'll talk to you again next week.